Welcome to the Viz Art Podcast, the business of art. I'm excited to have Sammy Dulay Designs here. We are going to talk a little bit about her jewelry, how she got started, and she's been a big part of our gallery. She's been with us for 6 years, and it's time to bring her on and talk about, how much she's grown and what she's doing. So, Sammy, thank you for coming to the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. So, yeah, we've known each other for a while. We actually met at the farmer's market when I was doing the Oceanside Sunset Market, and you stopped by, and I don't know if you're doing some, looking around to see how you can get into the market, but that's, I know, when I first met you.
Yep. Before I was in farmers markets myself, I used to frequent them a lot just, because I've always been an artist. I like to see what was going on locally in the community. Of course, produce, food, and all that stuff. But yeah, I used to see you at the farmers market down in Oceanside because I used to live downtown Oceanside. And I remember specifically there was a time when I came by with my sister and she was in town.
Yes, I remember. I think you bought her a piece.
I did. You're right. I did. That was my gift to her. Yeah.
That's awesome. So yeah, we've known each other before the shop. When did you actually start your business? Like, when did you think this is something I want to pursue? Because I remember you were actually working around the corner at the bead shop, and you were teaching people you were doing classes on beading and jewelry. Is that kind of when you got the idea?
Sort of. It was a little bit before that.
Okay.
I'm actually, this month, I'm officially 10 years in business.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
That's great.
So I started in 2010, and it started out, I worked at a restaurant, actually. Up in Oceanside, and I was the front desk lead. And so for that, there was an important emphasis on appearance, and you're the first thing that the guests see when they come in. So I started making my own jewelry to wear, and some of the servers and the cocktail waitresses noticed, and they wanted some of my pieces.
Nice.
So I started making a couple pieces here and there and selling them, for a few bucks. The shop that I was getting my supplies at, it used to have a second location in downtown Oceanside also.
Okay, I think I remember that one.
Yeah, right on Mission Avenue.
Yep.
And so I used to go in there, and then obviously I was going in there more and more and more because more and more people wanted more jewelry. And eventually they asked if I wanted a job there. And so I ended up leaving the restaurant and became a manager for them. And while I was working there, that was when my business started.
Nice. Yeah, it was pretty cool to see you. When I opened the gallery, you popped in and you were like, "Hey, would you be willing to sell?" And at the time, you were doing beading. Like, yes. Beading was your main.
Yes.
You were doing like candle holders. I remember you were doing a little bit of everything. How did because you've transitioned now you don't do any beading. I mean, like, it's pretty cool to see how much you have grown in these 6 years. I believe this was the first place that you've sold your jewelry and you were setting up out front.
Yep.
And yeah, you've been an asset to our shop. It's been great. But yeah, how did you go from beading to kind of start switching gears? Like, how did that kind of start happening?
Yeah, so it started out as beadwork, and so some of my some actually clients that I've had for all of these years have watched this entire transition over the years, which I think is really cool. And some of them actually still own some of those pieces, so they'll wear them, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I made that like 10 years ago.
That's OG right there.
So it started out as beadwork. I really enjoyed doing beadwork because I worked at a bead shop, and then eventually we had a teacher come in and she taught us some metal work and some metal stamping. And I remember thinking at the time, I wasn't really into it. And I was like, I don't think this is something I'm going to get into. And then what kind of really, like, I guess you could say triggered it was I started stamping pennies, and I started doing
those
lucky pennies. And so there was this whole like copper aspect to it. And I started doing like little inspirational things. This is kind of when I started to go more towards what I do now. And people just really enjoyed it. Like, enjoyed it a lot more than my beadwork, which kind of hurt a little bit.
Sure. You're putting a lot more time into it.
Exactly. Yeah. But I had to listen to what people were saying, and people were giving me a lot of compliments, and that's what they wanted to see more of. And then eventually in 2013, I met my husband, Tommy. And so it was nice to have an outside perspective and also a very honest perspective
Sure.
that someone cared about me.
That helps.
And he basically said, I think you really need to pursue this avenue of doing more metal work. That's what people are responding to. That's what they're buying. That's mostly what you sell now, and your beadwork kind of sits. So in 2013-14 was kind of when I started transitioning into more of my metal work. And I fell in love with it. I really just started hammering and doing all of my textured pieces and stamping and my little bangles and everything.
Nice. So when did you actually start selling it? Or were you mainly doing it through online or shows? Kind of what was your process of getting your jewelry out there?
So I did start out by doing shows. Online didn't come until later. Yeah.
Okay.
So I kind of was dabbling a little bit on Etsy.
Okay.
That didn't really work out for me though, because it's such a saturated thing.
Right.
I'd realized I was like, well, I need people to know who I am.
Right.
So one of the things that my old boss was able to offer me at the bead shop was she allowed me to set up sometimes out front, and I could sell my work on the weekends and things like that. So, and after I met Tommy was kind of when I started to do more shows and more pop-ups, and about the time when I had met you as well.
Okay.
And right before I met you was when I really started to realize I was like, well, I'm spending more time focusing on making jewelry in my off hours from work than I am thinking about any other thing. So I kind of started to realize that was the direction that I needed to go.
And that was also what helped you be able to, I guess, quit the bead shop and pursue this full time now, because you've been doing it full time for at least 5 years now, right?
Exactly. So the end of 2014 was when I had a serious discussion with Tommy, and that my business started to become a lot bigger than it was, and it was cutting into a lot of our time. And he basically was like, "Look, I think that you're at a point now where you can leave your day job." And I'm so nervous, because that's not something to take very lightly. And if that's you have a guaranteed income, and suddenly you're going to an income that it all depends on you.
Yeah.
If you sell some stuff, great, you're paying the bills, and if not, then you're eating ramen that night.
Yeah, that's the risk and reward thing we always talk about, is you got to look at those and make that decision on, and here's the thing too, it's kind of my same thing with Carl Strauss when I worked at the brewery. Mm-hmm. The general manager was like, look, if this doesn't work out for you, you can always come back to here. And so, having that, I guess that's kind of the same way. It's like, look, if that didn't work out, I'm sure they would have offered you that job back too.
Exactly. It's not something where I, burnt the bridge at the end. It was a very nice, peaceful separation, if you will. They have a second location here now in Carlsbad, and so at that time they were going through some transition themselves, and they actually closed the Oceanside store. So it was kind of the perfect split. So when they closed Oceanside was when I took a step back and I went on my own, and it was one of the best decisions I've ever made since then.
That's awesome. And I hear that all the time from artists who it's that time, okay, when do I pursue this full time? Mm-hmm. And that's definitely a discussion you have to have by yourself. If you're married, if you have kids, all those are factors in it. But, if you take that risk, and if you're doing it part-time too, I try to tell people, like, work at another job and do this on the side to see how it works, instead of just jumping in 100%. Yeah. You got to test the waters out a little bit. I feel like for a lot of the artists that I know, that's kind of what they did, unless they went the school route and they basically just were able to get right in there. But for someone like you and I, who are like, oh, we kind of like this, like, let's go at it. But it was.
It definitely wasn't. It wasn't anything I had planned. I think that was probably one of the coolest parts about it, was that it just kind of, it happened. And that's, one of those old sayings, it's if the things that, they'll just happen if they're meant to be.
There you go. There you go. All right, so now what materials are you using? So you're not doing the beading anymore.
Correct.
What materials, because I don't even actually see your copper anymore. You stopped with copper, so I know you went to copper and then you switched over. So what was kind of the transition into the metals that you have?
So I worked in copper for probably a good, I would say, three-ish, maybe 4 years.
Okay.
And eventually there was a demand for silver. And so people wanted sterling silver, and they asked if I would make pieces for them that I already made in a different material. And of course I would do it by custom order. But that demand grew and grew and grew, and eventually, just like I transitioned out of the beadwork, I eventually transitioned out of the copper. So I do mostly work in silver. I also work in 14 karat gold filled. And more recently, I also do 14 karat solid gold and white gold as well.
Nice. What is the difference? This is a big question I hear all the time. You hear it all the time too. What is the difference between like 14 karat gold, gold fill, gold plated? So you use gold fill.
Correct.
What is kind of the difference there?
Okay, so you have 14 karat gold plated, which is the most common. So you'll see this anywhere online on Etsy, little boutiques and things. You can also kind of tell by the price point of what it is, because some people get confused about that.
Sure.
So if you're looking at a cheaper price point, you're looking at a gold necklace and it's $20, $30, likely going to be 14 karat gold plated.
Okay.
Something that's a little bit more, like for example, my bangles here, I sell them for $85. They're 14 karat gold filled. What that means in difference of plated is that this is not going to wear off like gold plated does. It doesn't turn you colors. It's not going to turn you green. And if you are sensitive, it's not going to irritate your skin either.
Okay.
And for like a measurement sake, if you're into that kind of thing, 14 karat gold plated is about 1/2000th gold. This is 1/20th gold.
Okay.
So there's also a big difference in terms of the gold content as well.
Nice.
And then 14 karat gold is what you see typically in the jewelry stores and throughout the industry. It's the American standard for gold, whereas around the world, and even here too, you'll see a little bit of 18 karat gold or even 22 karat gold, which has got some different colors and tones in it.
Nice. So yeah, sterling silver 925. If you ever see that stamp 925, that's sterling silver, and then fine silver 999. That's
Correct.
kind of where you can start soldering, because you can't even really solder with sterling silver, right?
Oh no, you can.
You can.
Yeah,
Okay.
it works. It's the same as fine silver. You can solder with it. You can do all the same things between the two.
Okay.
Yeah.
I know in the middle of all this, you actually not even 5 minutes from here, there's Geological Institute of America, which is GIA.
Yes.
Most people are familiar with GIA. Can you tell me what first GIA is and how are you involved with that, and what did you do?
Okay. So GIA stands for the Gemological Institute of America.
I was close.
And you were close. It's okay. It still got the point across.
I got the point across. All right.
And it basically, if you're familiar with, if you ever bought a diamond, or most people are familiar with like a GIA cert or a GIA certificate.
Okay.
So GIA is where diamonds get sent to get certified. There are other places.
Almost like baseball cards. When you would get but in that sense for
Yeah,
people,
yeah,
so
exactly.
you go and send that and see how pristine it is, right? Okay.
Exactly. And now, one thing that most people confuse with is like they have stones at home. They're like, oh, I want to go sell them. GIA will not give you a value of your stone. What they will give you is the origin, what it's made of, the cut, the clarity. Any other kind of, like some stones, even diamonds too, or emeralds and things, there's different treatments that they can do to them to make them different colors or different saturations.
Okay.
So they're going to give you all those characteristics of the stones. They're not going to tell you that you can go and sell this for $3,000. That's not how it goes. But that is what they're mostly known for. They are also one of the most prestigious schools that you can go to in terms of learning the jewelry trade. So they teach everything from if you just want to work in a jewelry store and know how to sell jewelry, or if you want to sell diamonds, or become a geologist and know your stones, or if you want to become a bench jeweler and actually create the things yourself. And also jewelry design. So if you want to go and just design and then be able to give it to your jeweler to then make. So I got involved because I actually had a customer, a longtime friend who started out as a customer, became a friend from the bead store.
Okay.
And she used to come and see me at the farmer's market. And she's very much into rocks and jewelry, and she had toured GIA, which, by the way, you can tour GIA. So if you're
Which is well worth it. I think it's incredible. You have to. You have to.
And they change the exhibits. I think it's twice a year. So you can always be going and always see something new. And they'll take a little, they'll take you out on a little tour, and they'll show you all the different cases and all the jewelry they have in there. And it's very worth it. But so I had this customer, and she always toured there, and she always went to GIA. And so she came to me and she said, I really think that you need to look at going to GIA. And the thought had never crossed my mind until that moment. And so I said, oh, okay. And I kind of, I thought about it, but I wasn't too I didn't delve into it too much right then. And then she came back, and she would always mention it every time she saw me. And I said, okay, well, let's take a look. So I went and I looked, and I did find some like basic fine jewelry repair and stone setting classes that I could take during the summer.
Okay.
They weren't terribly expensive, because it is a little bit expensive to go there.
Sure.
So I took those classes. It was the summer of 2016. Yes, 2016. And so that was a few weeks during the summer. After that, she came back to me again. I showed her what I'd learned, because then that already expanded my knowledge and my skill of being able to like fix, gold chains and set stones and just little things that happen to people, through daily wear. And that already expanded my business. So then she came back to me and she said, I think you can do more, and I think you should apply for a scholarship.
That's awesome.
And I was kind of blown away, because, I was very humbled. I was like, I don't think I could get a scholarship.
Yeah.
Like, why would they give me a scholarship? But of course, I explored the idea. Now, this was also the time my husband, Tommy, we'd gotten married by this point, was going to deploy. So we discussed it, and it basically boiled down to, if I apply for the scholarship, it was kind of the perfect time.
Perfect timing.
Because I was already in business, so I was already busy with that. But if I had my business and school, it's basically like a 12 to a 15-hour day. And if he was gone, that was kind of the perfect time to do it.
Yeah.
Because I could work all morning and all night and do school during the day, and it would work out. So then I think a month or two after talking to her, I applied for the scholarship. And then later that year, later in 2016, I got the letter that I got a full ride scholarship
awesome.
to learn 3D modeling and CAD design at GIA.
Yeah, so, that's big time. I mean, honestly,
was.
if you're not familiar with GIA, I mean, it is in our backyard here in Carlsbad.
Mm-hmm.
It's less than 5 miles. It is the top, if not the best in the world, where people go.
It's world renowned, yeah.
It is world renowned. I mean, any diamonds, the biggest ones, all the ones that the Queen has, all of those big ones, like, that's where they go. And you were able to go there, get a scholarship.
Yeah.
You've come out. And I've seen, even once you got done, I mean, because you're GIA certified, right? I mean, or GIA. I mean,
they don't call it cert.
Okay.
It's not. It's kind of an interesting thing to say. Is like, typically people will say that they're GIA certified, but you kind of say that you went to GIA, and you kind of. It's a respect thing. If somebody in the industry told you that, hey, I'm GIA, then they'll let you look at their diamonds. They'll let you they'll understand that, okay, you've been taught by the best. Exactly.
And it has shown in your jewelry over the last couple years, especially once you got done with that. I mean, now you've started doing these more intricate rings, CAD stuff.
Yeah.
You've been playing around with that, which is phenomenal. I definitely am excited to keep following you after we close. We're actually closing the shop here. It's been 7 years. Sammy's been a part of it 6 years. But I'm obviously going to be continuing to follow you, see where you go, because I see this tremendous potential, especially in the years you've been doing it. So I think GIA has really kind of helped you personally as far as kind of opening your eyes to see what else there is you can do.
It has. And especially, like you said, mentioning doing rings. So I've been able to do a lot of like engagement and wedding rings, which has been like I think I have the most fun doing that.
That's awesome.
Yeah. I get to be involved in a really special time in someone else's life, and they trust me with that. So that's a really, really good feeling. And
hopefully that means a little more money for you instead of sitting and hammering, because you do a lot of hammer work. I mean, that's what you do is you hammer the jewelry, you do customized sayings and quotes, and like this, I think it's a lot more personal.
It is.
And you really kind of can cater to each of your customers and clients, and I think it's great to see what you have done. What scares you as an artist and a business owner?
Growth. Yeah. The whole thing about you gotta be uncomfortable sometimes to grow. And it's a constant. You have to grow. You can't stay stagnant. And so those moments when you're unsure, where you're not sure if you want to take the risk, and you have to lean into it. Yeah. That's where the best parts of you come out, and that's where kind of like adapt or die, right? It really is. You have to change. Yeah. I mean, if like you said, you were doing the copper. I remember when you were doing those
penny necklaces or keychains and all that.
And necklaces too.
And necklaces. And, I was definitely hoping that you would grow out of that just because and you did. But yeah, I mean, growth is your biggest fear, huh?
Yeah, growth is my biggest fear. I mean, it's exciting too.
It's exciting.
It's one of those, it's scary, but it's also very exciting because you can see the potential.
Yes.
It's almost like you can see the light at the end of the tunnel, but it's just that process of getting there, of being uncomfortable and doing things you've never done before, going places you've never been.
And that's where I think the business owner and entrepreneur of that, of each of us comes out is looking always to grow. And a lot of us never want to stay. Like I never want to stay the same. I always am looking for what's next. And growth is a big part of business, especially when your industry's changing so quickly and there's so much you got to try to keep up with.
100%.
And what advice would you give someone who wants to start a business?
Oh boy. You just kind of have to do it. You kind of really have to do it. I know that in the past that you've done a little bit of consulting and like you will sometimes have some people come in and they'll want to talk your ear off for an hour and ask you all these questions. And it kind of approaches the idea of analysis by paralysis. And I think people get so hung up on these little details and, well, how do I do this and how do I do that? And this, find what you're passionate about and just do that. Yeah. And you'll figure it out along the way. And you're going to make mistakes. That's the other thing, too, is don't be afraid to make mistakes because it's inevitable.
It is.
But you learn from it. Yep. And then you move on from there and you grow. And it kind of, it leads into the other point that I made. Just kind of start doing it. You just have to start somewhere.
That's awesome. And you're right. You can't have the littlest things holding you up.
Yeah.
I mean, like I know a lot of artists who they get held up by, well, I got to get every piece copyrighted or trademarked. It's like, no, don't let that hold you back to why you want to start a business. Yeah. It's the littlest things that you guys gotta get out there. I mean, that's what it is. And you'll learn as you go. You'll read books about it, talk to other artists, figure it out. I mean, but that's great advice. I mean, just get out there and make it happen.
It is. And I mean, in terms of like talking to other artists, we are a network.
Yes.
And so whether it's like me with jewelry or you with art, we're in two different industries, so to say. But there are a lot of similarities. And I know that you and I have bounced a lot of business ideas off of each other. And, whether it's good or bad, it just, it's nice to have that outside perspective.
Well, even shows too. Like, I can't tell you right now, we're in January. And so a lot of us are planning our year out or even into next year. And, having a network of artists of like, hey, what shows are you doing? Have you tried this show yet? And like, hey, there's this new one. Like, that's huge.
It is.
Being able to talk about that instead of just looking online or going and testing out one of the local ones. But I mean, that, like you said, it's just talking with other artists and building those relationships because we are in this together. I mean, I know there are a lot of artists who they don't want to help other people because yes, it took them a while and there are some trade secrets. I get that in your craft, but if you're open to helping other people and if you're asking for advice, and you better be able to help give other people advice too when it comes time to it. So I think that's big. I mean, because this industry is not easy. It's not. But really, at the end of the day, there's enough business to go around for everybody. There's no 100%. Need to be selfish and to not be that nice artist that everybody wants to learn from and talk to. And you're open about it. I mean, because I know people ask you about how do you hammer it out? Where do you get your materials from?
Yeah.
I mean, waverings. Almost every jewelry artist who's working with silver has kind of their own style of waverings, but everyone has a little bit something different to it. And there's plenty of fingers and girls and people that go around.
There's 7 billion people on the planet.
Yeah. So I think that's great. Is there anything else you want to say before we close it up?
I don't think so. No, I think we've covered a lot.
Well, I appreciate it, Sammy. You have truly been a great part of our gallery. You're out front selling on the weekly farmers markets on Wednesdays. You've come out on the weekends. You've done our gallery events, and it's been a pleasure having you a part of this shop. You've brought a lot of customers here. So yes, thank you for what you do, and you got a big future of what's to come, Sammy. So that is the business. I appreciate the time. We'll see you next time, and definitely check out Sammy and her jewelry either at a local farmer's market here. Do you want to say that? Where are you showing your work currently?
So currently, after the shop closes, I will be Saturdays at the Vista Farmers Market. I'm there from 8 to noon. And then Tuesdays, I'm down in Pacific Beach from 2 to 7. But of course, if you follow me on my social media, it's at Samantha Dulay or Samantha Dulay Designs on Facebook. I do put my schedule and everything up there, so you can always follow me.
And your website,
My website, yes,
SamanthaDulayDesigns.com. Check her out. Well worth it. Thank you so much. We'll see you next time.